Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone had a wonderful week. So we are doing Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law, chapter 89, chapter 89. And we're going to start a Siman Pei Test, a new chapter 89. Din Bosses L'Davar Aser. This is the laws of something that's a base for something that's muksa. So we've mentioned it, by the way, several times because it's sort of come up as a part of our discussion. But we've spoken about it generally. Now we're going to go into the details. So just to give a quick introduction. So we know that something that doesn't have a purpose on Shabbos, for example, a pen, is muksa. Right, so that means we can't move it on Shabbos. Now, not only is the item itself muksa, but a base, a bosses, something that supports it is muksa. So an example could be, you could have a bowl that could just as well hold candies, which are food, so it's not muksa. And yet that same bowl now has coins when Shabbos began. And so now this bowl has become a base. It's become subordinated to the coins. So even a table, even a piece of furniture can become a base, a bosses to something that's muksa. So we'll go through all the details as we go through the chapter. So Aleph, number one. Kli shaloi shaniach alav be'erev Shabbos. You have a utensil. Now, utensil, keli, can mean like a utensil, like a bowl, but even a table, a piece of furniture, any object, any object at all, and you put on it Be'erev Shabbos on Friday, Dava Muksa B'Kavona. You put a Muksa item on it, and here's a key word, with Kavona, in other words, intentionally. And we'll have a paragraph later that'll discuss it a bit more. But essentially, there's a difference between, I deliberately put my wallet on this tray. That's where I want to keep it. That means I've done it with kavanah, I've done it intentionally. But if I had something muksa that I just sort of tossed into the room and it happened to land on the tray, or something fell, or even I put it there myself, but absent-mindedly. In other words, it wasn't, I didn't particularly want it there. I was just, taking it out of my pocket and just put everything down, rushed in the last minute before Shabbos, quickly have a shower before Shabbos, and I just put my keys down, car keys down, whatever. Otherwise, I didn't particularly want them in this place. It just happened to be, they ended up in this place. That's not called intentional. So intentional means I deliberately, purposely, I want the item in this case. So if before Shabbos begins, I intentionally put this object on something, and my intention is to leave it there until Shabbos begins. So if I just quickly put my car keys there, and I was intending in 5 minutes later to put them away somewhere else, but forgot or ran out of time or whatever it was, then it doesn't count. So I have to, A, put it there intentionally, and B, that's with the intention to leave it there until Shabbos begins. So if those two things, I put something muksa on top of something else with the intention, I put it there deliberately, and I'm intending to leave it there until after Shabbos begins, then this object, whatever it was, a tray, a bowl, a table, has now become a bosses, a base to the muksa item. and it's therefore become an extension of the muksa item. And therefore, even if later the object is taken off the base, so I put it on the tray and it got removed from the tray on Shabbos, intentionally, accidentally, all irrelevant, but it's not there now. We call Mokum nevertheless, since the twilight, right, which is the deciding time, this object was a base to the muksa. It was an extension of the muksa. So even though the muksa is not on it now, nevertheless, this item became a base, became an extension of something that is muksa, and therefore it now itself becomes muksa. Afterwards, I can't move this item the entire day, entire Shabbos. Even if I need it for itself, in other words, I want to use the tray to hold open my window, or even if I want the space, the object became muksa and I want to put something else where it is. So all of these things. So let's sum it up. A muksa item, if I place it on something else deliberately, with the intention to leave it there until after Shabbos begins, then whatever I placed it on becomes muksa. And the key time is in twilight. So you can have the same bowl. One Friday afternoon, this bowl, I put chocolate-coated almonds. There we go, nice Shabbos treat in the bowl. And this bowl now is no problems. I can move it. I can use it the whole Shabbos. The next Friday, that very same bowl, we put money in the bowl, or pens, or my cell phone, or car keys, whatever it happens to be. And I put it there deliberately, put it there with the intention to leave it there until Shabbos began. Now this bowl has become an extension of these muksa items. It's a bosses, it's a base for them, a support, and it becomes muksa in of its own right. So even if later on someone bumps the bowl, all the muksa things fall out, and now it's an empty bowl. And I want to put the chocolate-coated almonds in it again. I can't, because for the rest of that Shabbos, it remains muksa, because it was muksa during twilight. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yes.
I wanted to say that I think some people, they naturally think, what is muksa? It's something that it's going to lead to a malacha. It's going to lead to one of the forbidden labors that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, which is the case with some things like a pencil and the writing. But then with other things, it has nothing to do with the malacha, it seems. It just has to do with whether it's useful for Shabbos or not.
Correct. So the definition of not having a purpose on Shabbos means that it can't be used on Shabbos. So here, something became muksa because it became an accessory to something that was muksa. So that's an exception to the rule. The bowl itself, you can't do a malacha with a bowl, but since it became a support, a base for something that was muksa, so therefore it became muksa via being an accessory. But other things generally, either malacha or, as you correctly said, has no purpose. Let's say, for example, a rock. So a rock, you could pick up, put down, walk around with a rock in your house all day long if you want. There's no malacha there, but it doesn't have a purpose unless you gave it a purpose before Shabbos. but in this case you didn't, and therefore it's correct. It's muksa, even if it will not lead to a malacha. All right. Any questions on the first section? No. Okay. Base number 2. Okay. So, as we said, it's twilight. When Shabbos begins, that is the key time. So, Hayamunach Sham Bachnosa Shabbos Gam Dove Heter. So, in this bowl with the kakis, before Shabbos began, we put in something that is not muksa. So let's say, I don't know, a spoon. So in the bowl, there's a spoon and a kaki. So that what's happened now is v'naseh hakli bosses l'dava ha'asa u'ledava mutam. So this bowl has simultaneously become a bosses, a support, an extension of both of them, both the item that is muksa and the item that is not muksa. So, im hadava muta yoisa chashav loy, if the non-muksa item is more important to you than muta l'taltaloi, then we say that since it's more important, spoon, it's a silver-plated spoon or silver spoon, so it's even more valuable than the car keys, which I've got 3 spare sets. And therefore, this bowl, we say primarily has become a base to the spoon, to the non-muksa item. And therefore, I can move around the bowl, even while the other things, the muksa things are in it. However, the im hadava also yosef chashav loy, if the non-muksa item is more important than also the taltaloi, then I can't move the bowl. Okay, so I've been using a bowl, but now we're going to go to a little more extreme case. And therefore, it's good to put colors on the table before twilight, before Shabbos begins. Kedei shir hamape v'shulchan abosas l'neiros l'chalois v'yu moturim b'tultul. In order that the table and the tablecloth will not become a base purely to the Shabbos candles, because you want to be the mover. So let's go back a step and explain. I have my dining room table. On the dining room table is a tablecloth. On top of the tablecloth, I put Shabbos candles, which I light before Shabbos. And for the moment, let's say there's nothing else on the table. I'm setting the table later. But right now, all I have are the candles. And we light the candles. Therefore, now the candlestick and the candles are muksa. Then what happens is, if there's nothing else on this table, when Shabbos begins at twilight, then the table and the tablecloth become muksa. Now, the table may not be so much of an issue because, you may have no intention of moving the table. Sitting at the table isn't going to be a problem. It's only moving. Muksa is not a problem to touch muksa. The problem is to move muksa. So you may have no intention of moving the table. But the tablecloth, you might want to shake it out from crumbs. You change your tablecloth. There could be lots of reasons. So this table and tablecloth have become a base to the muksa and are therefore muksa themselves. So the advice we're given here is we should put the challahs on the table in order that the table and tablecloth not only a base to the candles, but also a base to the challah. And therefore it's a base for a muksa and non-muksa item. And therefore the muksa, the more valuable one takes priority. So before we talk about the value, let's just, the concept that it's a base for something that's muksa and not muksa. And therefore, since the base is something that's not muksa as well, I'm allowed to use it. Side point to this, although we're speaking about a table, many people don't put their candlesticks directly on the table. Many people put their candlesticks on a tray onto the table. So the same idea applies to the tray. You know, if you want to, you can't move the candles while they're lit, but after a certain amount of time, the candles go out. So if you want to be able to pick up this tray and remove the candlesticks and various things from the table, so we have to put something non-muksa on the tray. So a siddur, some people put a siddur or a challah or a bottle of wine, whatever happens to be. Now, we've said that the non-muksa item has to be more valuable than the muksa item. Now, most people, you know, let's say, for example, they have a silver Shabbos candlesticks. So most people's silver Shabbos candlesticks are probably more valuable than a loaf of challah, right? And nevertheless, we say putting a challah solves the problem. And this is because the real muksa item is the flame. The candlestick just happens to be an extension, a support for the flame. It itself is a bosses, is a base, right? So the real forbidden item is the flame, and a flame in of itself doesn't have much value, if any. So therefore, the challah is more valuable than the flame, even if it's not more valuable than the candlestick. So we need to put the challah or wine or siddur, something on the table and or the tray, if you use a tray, in order to be able to move the tray or the tablecloth off the table at a later date. So that is
Rabbi, question.
Please.
Putting a siddur on top of the table doesn't solve the problem, especially if you have the candlesticks inside of a tray that's sitting on top of the table.
So
I think you would have to put it inside the tray itself
on the tray, yeah,
in order to be able to move it after the fact.
Yeah, so there's two issues. There's the table and tablecloth. So putting something on the table solves that problem. If you're also using a tray and you want to be able to remove the tray once the candles have gone out, then the item has or the same item or a different item, whatever, needs to be on the tray. I mentioned the tray as an aside because many people light their Shabbos candles on a tray, but the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch just come at the table. You know, if you put it directly on the table, candlesticks directly on the table. So in order to avoid having the table and the tablecloth becoming muksa, we put an item on the table. That's correct. If we're putting the candlesticks on a tray, then if we want to be able to move the tray, then we need something on the tray as well.
So what you're basically saying is that in order for the tablecloth not to become muksa, even if I have a tray on which the candlesticks are sitting, I would have to put something on the tray and on the table.
No, not both. If you have it on the tray, then the tray down is a support for something that's not muksa. The tray down meaning the tray, now the tablecloth, and the table.
Okay.
Yeah. What I was just trying to differentiate is maybe someone didn't care about moving the candles, so they just put it on the table. But if you want to be able to move the tray, then you need to put something on the tray. And that would kill two birds with one stone and also help.
Okay, it looks like it's working now.
Yeah, it would also kill two birds with one stone, in that it would take care of the table and the tablecloth at the same time. because anything is leveled down. So if, let's say for an example, if you had a few things stacked up. So let's say we have a, we use the table. We'll use the example of the candles on a tray. So if on Shabbos, if on Shabbos we had the candlesticks on a tray, the tray on a tablecloth, and under that was under the tablecloth, sometimes they put another, so like a rubber thing to stop the table getting scratched, and the table, and there was nothing else on the table when Shabbos began. So everything becomes a base for the muksa because the table is holding up the rubber underlay supporting the tablecloth supporting the tray supporting the candles. Once I interrupt that, then everything underneath becomes not muksa. So if I put the siddur on the tray, not only did I save the tray, but the tray itself is no longer an extension of muksa. So therefore, the tablecloth that's holding it up is not a problem. The rubber underlay underneath that is no problem, and the table is no problem. So once I've interrupted the concept of the base, it's no longer a base, no longer extension, then everything after that is taken care of as well.
Rabbi Warnick,
Yes.
earlier you said something about it. You can carry a rock around all day. Did you say it was muksa or not muksa?
Yeah, so 2 points. So the rock is muksa, but we were speaking about doing malacha. That's what I mentioned.
That's why I don't understand, because you're not going to do any malacha with the
Correct.
rock.
But anything that doesn't have a purpose on Shabbos is muksa. So a rock has no purpose. Now, you might give it a purpose before Shabbos, and it has to be before Shabbos. So you might say, for example, this rock I use to hold open my door. It's a doorstop.
Yes, yes.
Or a very large rock, I use it as a stool. It's a chair I have in my backyard, and I sit on the big rock. So that's fine because you gave it a purpose. But a regular rock, even if you want to later use it as a doorstop or a chair, but when Shabbos began, you hadn't done that. You didn't give it the purpose. So when Shabbos began, it had no purpose, and therefore it is muksa. But the comment I made before was about malacha, one of the actual prohibited, biblically prohibited actions on Shabbos, carrying a rock around in a place where you're allowed to carry is not a malacha in of itself.
No.
Okay.
So but we aren't allowed to do it because the rock is considered muksa if we don't give it a purpose before Shabbat.
Correct.
I see.
So Rabbi, do you have to say out loud that I am assigning this rock to be, let's say, the doorstop?
Yeah, designating in thought is good enough.
Okay.
Okay, so the im loy asakain, if you didn't put something on the, Yehuda, sorry.
Yeah, to get back to your example with the candlesticks on
Yes.
the tray. So if you're taking them off if you intend to take them off the table, they need to be on a tray, right?
Not necessarily, well, probably that would be the most practical way.
Right.
Yeah. You need to do something like that. Or possibly, depends on the candlesticks you have yourself, I don't have it here to show you, but we have, some people have a custom to light an additional candle for every child. So
Right.
in the honor of Baruch Hashem, we have 11 children, so my wife lights 13 candles. So we have a nice candelabra that I got her for our 10th anniversary with 10 candles. So We didn't need all of them then yet, but So anyway, the other three, that's the point that I'm getting to. The other three, it's like a little piece that holds just 3 candles, and it's not a separate piece. It's like the base that holds it up, and we just put candies on that base. So so it didn't have to be on a tray per se, because the flame, the fire, or the oil is the real muksa part. So it happens to be this particular one, there's a place to put something on its own base. So that's not muksa, and that allows me to move it. But if you have the like regular sort of sticks, the candles, then they would have to be on a tray or something. So I don't mean to be long-winded, but I'm saying generally, practically, yes, they're going to have to be on a tray with something not muksa to move it. But in theory, if you had one that could support something not muksa as well as the flame, then that would be sufficient.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Okay. So the imloy asakain, if you didn't do that, you didn't put a challah or a siddur or something on, then the tablecloth and the table have become a designated base, and therefore an extension of the forbidden object, here the candles, and now you can't move the tablecloth or the table. Now, yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear because it was some competition. How do you designate something? As Ezra asked, you have to say something out loud in order to designate, for example, the rock is going to be a seat outside.
So I'm saying thought is good enough.
Oh, thought is good enough. Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, so let's say we have someone is put the candlestick on the table and he didn't put anything else. And therefore the table and tablecloth have become muksa. So what can he do? So mikol mokim b'di'evet, but after the fact, im yesh sarf gadol, if there's a pressing need, great need. Going, so we'll give an example. What happened was the lit candle fell onto the table, and you want to shake it off, because if you leave it there, it's going to set your table alight, God forbid. So it hasn't done that yet. It's just sort of fallen. It's not in a good spot. There's no danger right now. There's no damage right now, but you like to avoid it. So that's an example of after the fact and a great need. So great need isn't, well, I want to put a picture of orange juice where the candlestick is, right? That's not considered, it might be a need, but it's not a great need. But here the candle is fallen off. It's going to end up burning down, and you'd like to shake it off into the kitchen sink, let's say, or somewhere else so that be safe. Then then we can rely on a lenient opinion that holds the following. There is a view that we don't rely on under normal circumstances, but this view says that something only becomes a bosses, only becomes a base to muksa if I intended to leave the object the entire Shabbos. So since the candles are going to go out, so there's not going to be a flame the entire Shabbos, therefore I never intended to leave it the entire Shabbos. So therefore, it didn't become a base. Now, this is a minority opinion. We don't normally rely on that, but in a case of great need, we can. Now, in Europe or in Hungary, maybe in particular where this book was written, it seemed that the people would have non-Jews come to help out in the house Shabbos morning, and they would take the candlesticks off the table as part of their work. And since the intention is to specifically remove them now, then the table will not become a base because it's only ever temporary. You'll never, even when you put the candlesticks there, your intention was, and the cleaning lady is going to come take them away in the morning. So the intention wasn't to really leave it there. So in that case, the table would never become a base. So not all of us have cleaning ladies come Shabbos morning, so it doesn't help all of us. But if you do, that's solves one issue. All right. Any questions on number 2? Okay. So Gimel, number 3. So just a quick introduction to number 3. If you had different layers of base, then one could become subordinate to another. So we're going to give an example that someone has something muksa in a pocket in an item of clothing. So although the pocket most definitely becomes a bossis, becomes a base to the muksa item, but the pocket is subordinate, it's become nullified compared to the item of clothing. So let's say a person has an overcoat. So the pocket is almost irrelevant to the overcoat. I mean, it's a handy accessory. It's always handy to have pockets in your clothes, but it's insignificant compared to the overcoat as a whole. So even though the pocket has become a base to something that's muksa, the overcoat has not, because the pocket's not important enough to the overcoat to affect the status of the entire overcoat. Okay, so let's see in Gimel number 3. Haya mois bekis atafa bebegdoi. You had money in a pocket that's sewn onto clothes. So if it's a separate piece, it's for sure not an issue, but it's sewn on, it's part of the garment. Mot to the taltas habeged, you're allowed to move the item of clothing. She'ain kol habeged nase bosses elakis, because the entire garment did not become a bosses, a base to the muksa, only the pocket did. But kiss, a bottle lagabi habeged, and the pocket is like nullified relative to the entire item of clothing. So I'm allowed to move it. However, I can't wear the garment even in my house. Why? We have a concern that I might end up wearing it out into the public domain, and then I'll be carrying. So, so there's the money or whatever it happens to be in the pocket of my coat. The pocket becomes a base for muksa. The coat as a whole does not. So I'm allowed to move the coat. I can hang it up. I can take it to a different room. However, I'm not allowed to wear it, because if I wear it, we're worried that I might keep wearing it, walk out the front door into the street, and end up carrying on Shabbos. That's clothing. So let's say you have, let's say like a bedside table or something, and you have drawers, or even sometimes in some dining room tables or kitchen tables have drawers. You have a table with a dresser or something, and it has drawers in it. The yeshmos b'teva, and you have money in the drawer. Also, taltas a shulchan. Then I can't move the table, right? Even though the pocket becomes nullified to the garment, the drawer does not become nullified to the table. Why? The drawer is a separate entity to the table. You can slide the whole drawer out, and I can carry it around, and use it as a separate entity, so it doesn't become nullified to the table that it's in. Now, if the drawer also had something that's not muksa, that's a separate story. Then it's like we had in the previous, in number 2, if the non-muksa is more important than the muksa, then we say that the primary item is the non-muksa, and therefore the drawer never became muksa. So let's keep it simple. It was only money, nothing else in the drawer. So we don't compare it to the garment and say, well, it's only in the pocket, it's only in the drawer. I can move around the table like I can the garment, because the drawer does not become nullified, because it is a separate piece, separate entity. And therefore, if I move the table, I'm moving this drawer, and so I can't do that. Okay. Daled, number 4. Now, as we said, the key time is Bein Hashmashos, twilight. So, but that time, so when at sunset, whoever it is at sunset. So, if the muksa item, again, let's use the car keys as an example, is in this bowl at sunset, then the bowl becomes a base, an extension of the muksa car keys. However, if it got put in the bowl 2 hours after Shabbos began, it is not a base for the muksa, it is not an extension. So we'll see. Number 4. Lo nase bosses ela in came b'muksa hayamunach sham bein hashmashos. The base or the item, whatever happens to be, only becomes a base for muksa if it was in the twilight period between sunset and nightfall. So depending where you are, there can be different lengths of time, but let's say 45 minutes on average. It's a 45-minute window. In that time, if the muksa got put on any time during that 45 or whatever happens to be minute window, depending where you live, on Friday, then the item becomes the base of the muksa. However, if it wasn't there during twilight period, it wasn't there between sunset and nightfall. It got put there afterwards, after Shabbos, after nightfall. So, candle lighting was 6 o'clock, and 8:30 at night, it got put there. Much later, then loy nase bosses, the item did not become a base, did not become an extension of the muksa. Mutal tantal is a kli, and you can move the bottom item, the base, afilu b'shasha muksa alav, even while the muksa is still on it. So for the question, I'll just give an example of what we're saying, then we'll take the questions. So again, let's say I have the bowl, and what happened was 2 hours after Shabbos began, my car keys fell off the shelf above and landed in the bowl. And I want to move the bowl for whatever reason. I need the bowl. I want the space of the bowl it was. I want to show my friend my bowl, whatever it happens to be. Since the muksa item was not on this bowl or in this bowl during twilight, between nightfall and between sunset and nightfall, the bowl did not become a base of the muksa, did not become an extension. The bowl is completely non-muksa, and I can move around this bowl the whole Shabbos, even if the car keys are still in the bowl. So, Hilda, you had a question?
You just answered it.
Oh,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Anytime. Anytime. All right. And therefore, mutal anaris a shulchan or as a mappe atzmus klippen. So again, we'll just go back a step to explain the case. Let's say, for example, eggshells. Use eggshells as an example. So Shabbos began, the eggshells are on the egg. So you're allowed to, eggs are food. It's definitely not muksa. You're allowed to eat an egg. And you peel the egg on Shabbos, and now you're left with the eggshells. The eggshells then are muksa. They weren't when they were attached to the egg, because the egg was the primary item. But now that they're off the egg, they're useless. They have no purpose on Shabbos, and therefore they're muksa. Likewise, bones. Had some chicken Friday night. You've eaten all the chicken off the bone, and now you have these bones lying around, and they're useless. Now, certain bones might be good for dog food, or the dog to chew. So something that's good for an animal is not muksa. But chicken bones you can't give to dogs, or maybe there's no dogs where you live, and whatever it is anyway. So the bones are muksa. And the bones are now, maybe they're on the tablecloth, or they're on a plate, whatever it happens to be. So the plate or the tablecloth or whatever is holding the bones or the shells or the orange peels are not a base for muksa, because the item was not there during twilight. Right? During twilight, between the period of sunset to nightfall, the bones were inside your piece of chicken on your warming tray. And the eggs were in the fridge, patiently waiting to be turned into egg salad, or whatever happens to be. Only after Shabbos began proper did these items end up being muksa in their own right. And since they only got put on the object, the plate or the tablecloth or whatever happens to be, after nightfall, then the item they're on does not become a base to muksa. The item they're on becomes completely permissible to move. Right, so this is provided that the table and tablecloth did not already become muksa because of the candles, like we had earlier. We discussed how it can, how it can't. So in other words, the bones and shells don't. So let's just use an example. Some people put a disposable plastic tablecloth over the tablecloth, so it's easy to clean up. And there's now some bones or shells. So if we did what we needed to do to make sure the tablecloth did not become muksa from the candlesticks, we put the challah there, or we had it on the tray, there was a sitter on the tray, whatever happens to be. So if we avoided that issue, then the bones and the shells will not make this tablecloth muksa, because they weren't there during twilight. Now after the meal, I just roll up the plastic tablecloth and throw it away. Or a real tablecloth and shake it out into the bin. We won't give such bad examples for the environment. Okay. Hey, number 5, unless there's any questions. No? All right. Number 5. Another exception to the rule. We mentioned this, by the way, but here's where it's written. The item only becomes a base for the muksa if I put the muksa on it intentionally, deliberately. And then it was placed there deliberately to remain there for all of twilight. However, if it remained for twilight on the item because you forgot. I gave the example before. I ran in last minute before Shabbos. It's winter. I threw down my car keys to have a quick shower. I intended to put the car keys away. before Shabbos, and I forgot, was too busy, and now they've been there the whole twilight. Or they fell there for whatever reason. Then since my intention was not to leave it there all of twilight, even though it was there all of twilight, but it was there unintentionally, loy nase bosses, then wherever it's on does not become a base. Had to be that I wanted it there. Okay. Vav, number 6. Loy nase bosses ella kalisha loy. Now this is an interesting concept. You can only make something muksa as a base if it's yours. So let's explain this concept a little bit before we finish off the reading inside. In other words, my intentions can only affect my personal belongings. So if I was staying at your house on Shabbos, it's not a hint for an invitation, but let's say staying in someone's house for Shabbos, and in the room, again, we'll just keep using the same example. There was a bowl, and I decided, you know what, this is where I'm going to keep my wallet, in this bowl over Shabbos, and I put my wallet and my phone and whatever else inside the bowl. Now it's not my bowl. The owner of the house was intending, or even if they hadn't planned it, but on Shabbos they decide they want to use that bowl to put some fruit to put on the table. So even though my wallet and my keys and my phone, I put them there deliberately, I intended them to stay there the whole twilight period and even through the whole of Shabbos. I want them there. It was on purpose, but since it was not my bowl, I don't have rights over that bowl to make it a base for my muksa. So my intention doesn't count because I don't have the rights over that bowl. So the owner later on, let's say dessert time at the end of the meal, two hours after nightfall, and they want that bowl. I mean, there's another question, how can they turn it up? We learned you can sort of turn on the side and let the thing fall out on its own. Can't reach his hand in and take the muksa out, but sort of turn the bowl over and let them fall out. They can take that bowl and pour out the muksa, take it into the other room. The bowl did not become a base of the muksa because as it wasn't mine, I didn't have the rights over it, so my intentions don't count. So that's the concept. Any questions on that before we read it inside? No?
Yeah, Rabbi.
Yep.
I'm just noting that I'm doing Rambam on Perikaday, and it's talking about pigul, and
Yep.
it says the owner's thought is not what makes it problematic, pigul. It's the Kohen's fault, whereas the owner's foreign thoughts don't affect it at all, which is sort of the opposite of this. I just want to
Yes,
mention.
it is. So since you raised it, without getting too much off the topic, but just for the people not familiar with speaking about, very quickly, pigul, the definition is that if the Kohen is preparing a sacrifice for someone, so there are 4 essential parts of bringing sacrifices. The shafting, there's the putting the blood on the altar, there's the catching the blood, transporting the blood, and actually pouring on the altar. If during any of these 4 essential parts of offering the sacrifice, the Kohen has the wrong intention. So let's say, for an example, not only this, but an example is, let's say this type of korban, this type of sacrifice can only be eaten for 1 day and the following night, because different offerings have different time limits of how long you have to eat them. And this one can only be eaten for 1 day. And the Kohen, when he put the blood on the altar, he had in mind to eat it in 2 days. So he had a intention that is inappropriate for this offering, and therefore he disqualified it. Now he could have this intention at any other time. It's only during the 4 essential parts of the sacrifice. So and that when it becomes invalidated, that's called pigul. So David noted that when it comes to Shabbos, we're saying it's not the person doing the action's intention that counts, it's the owner's intention. And yet when it comes to the pigul, it's the person doing, it's the opposite. It's the person doing the action whose intention counts and not the owner. You know, if he's offering the sacrifice on my behalf, because I'm not a kohen, so I can't bring my own sacrifice. So he's doing it for me. The owner's intention is irrelevant. It's the person who's doing it, in this case, the kohen. So the reason that it's different is that for Shabbos, it's a question of rights, of ownership. In other words, my own object, I put my own object on my own bowl. Again, it doesn't have to be a bowl, but as an example. And therefore, I've decided to make my bowl a base to my cell phone for Shabbos. And therefore, it becomes muksa as an extension of my cell phone. But if it's someone else's bowl, I actually don't have the right to designate it. It's not mine. You know, it's like saying, you know, my next door neighbor, I really like his car. So I'm going to go tomorrow for a drive in it. I don't have that right. If I take without permission, it's stealing. So the same things, I don't have rights. I don't have the permission to use this bowl to designate in a way that's going to impede the owner's usage because it's not mine. So that's the muksa. Pigul, though, the offering of the sacrifice, it's got nothing to do with ownership. Here the issue is there are 4 parts of the sacrifice process that have to be done properly. And part of doing it properly is not only the action has to be done properly, but the intention has to be done properly. And if the person doing it did not have the right intention for one or more of the parts of offering the sacrifice, then it essentially wasn't offered. And once it's shechted, it's not like you can do a rerun. You know, it's done already. You know, if it was lighting menorah and you know, I lit the wrong thing, so I can rerun. I can do it again. I can now light the correct. You know, by mistake I lit my Shabbos can. You know, well, my Shabbos can. You know, by mistake I lit my birthday cake candles. Oh, it's not the menorah. Good. I go fix it up. I now light the menorah, the Hanukkah candles. So you can redo it. But when it comes to a sacrifice, you can't reshecht an animal. You can't slaughter it. You know, it's dead already. You can't catch the blood that comes out from the shchita. It's done already. You know, I can't re-put that blood on the altar. It's already been put there. So if I mess up that part of the process, there's no rerun. So essentially that part of the process is considered as if it didn't happen. And these 4 parts are essential to every sacrifice. And if an essential part didn't happen, then the sacrifice is no good. I hope that wasn't too complicated. Sort of, it's good to get the questions from left field. You're keeping me on my toes.
Thanks for the explanation.
No
Rabbi,
problem. Yes.
can you just say 1, 2, 3, 4, what the 4 essential parts of the sacrifice are? Again, just briefly, so that I'm trying to take notes. It is
Okay. So there's the shchita, the slaughtering.
Shchita.
Then the catching of the blood.
Yes.
That means that, you know, the initial. I don't know if you've ever seen shchita before, but
Yes,
The first heartbeat afterwards is like a spray
yes,
of blood. And so when you visit an abattoir, it's a good idea is not to stand in front of that spray,
yes.
especially if you're wearing a white shirt. The third part is transporting the blood from where the shechita was to the altar.
Yes,
And the fourth part is pouring the blood or sprinkling the blood, depending on what, or
Okay.
applying the blood with your thumb. Again, different sacrifices, different process, but essentially putting the blood onto the altar.
thank you,
They're the four.
thank you.
No problems. Okay. So, Vav, number 6. You can only make something a base if you own it. But if you put something that's muksa on somebody else's belongings, it does not become a base, it does not become an extension to this muksa item. Because you can't make something forbidden that's not yours. Without the person's consent. So if the person said to you, if you said, "Can I keep my keys and wallet here?" He says, "Sure." Well, now it did become a base of the muksa because you're given permission, therefore you're given the rights over it, and it became a base of the muksa. But if you weren't given those rights, then you can't take someone else's item against their will, without their knowledge, and make something. It'd be a little bit, for example, similar concept. I can't donate your $10 to the shul. Right? I can donate $10 of mine, but I can't donate your $10 belongs to you unless you give me permission. So if you give me permission, you say, "Here's this money, distribute it to tzedakah as you see fit, or it's yours to use," then that's fine. I've got now a right over that amount of money. But if it's money sitting in your wallet or purse, I don't have any rights to that. I can't just say, "Well, now it's donated to the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash." That doesn't work that way. Even though it might be the wonderful cause, could be the best cause. But it's a mitzvah. But at the end of the day, I can't usurp the owner's rights over their belongings unless I've been given permission. Okay. Any questions? No?
Yes,
Yes.
Rabbi. So let's say, excuse me, if you put something which would ostensibly be muksa, like you're assuming that you're going to get the permission and somehow you don't, and your car keys are on that tray. Maybe there are other things that are not muksa, like I don't know, like perhaps a scarf or something like that, and it's on that tray. So you are then not allowed to touch your own thing, or you can, because he didn't end up giving you permission one way or the other.
Yeah. So having the non-muksa item just makes it easier. Let's even presume there's no non-muksa item there. Everything's muksa. So now we need to take the tray into the kitchen. The owner says, "I want my tray." So then you sort of turn the tray on its side. So without actually touching the muksa items, they fall off on their own.
I see.
And you'll take the tray in.
And he gets his tray.
Yeah, he gets his tray.
And what happens? You just leave the muksa items where they fall?
Yeah, so we're presuming the tray or the bowl, whatever they are, is on a bedside table or something, so you put it there. If it's something fragile, you wouldn't want to just sort of turn it onto the floor. Whatever. So, and then wherever they are, you leave them there till after Shabbos.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Now, if you had something not muksa, so of value as well. So let's say you had a piece of jewelry for a lady. Now, it was a nice, expensive piece of jewelry. So the jewelry is of more value than the wallet. Then you could even pick up the tray and take the tray wherever you like and pour off the muksa. Because it became a base primarily to the jewelry, which was more valuable than the other items. And I can, let's say I want to put them in my suitcase now. So I carry the tray across the room to the other side of the room, and I can pour the muksa items into my bag for extra protection, because the tray never really became a base to the muksa.
I see. Thank you.
Welcome. All right. I guess we ran out of time. So we'll start new chapter tomorrow, next week, God willing. So wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Welcome, a wonderful Shabbos, really great week.
Thank you,
Okay.
Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom.
Good
I look forward to
Shabbos.
seeing you again soon.
Shabbat shalom.
Amen. Good
Thank
Shabbos.
you.
Bye-bye.